Hi, it's Sharon from SharonTheReader.com. I would like to share something that happened during the week. It happened 2 days ago. And I'm going to be very frank here and say, and I hope this doesn't offend anyone, but I was never a person who was a Beatles fan. They weren't my era. If you were kind of in the 60s, then you would have been a Beatles fan, you would have loved them, known every song, all the rest of it. I came a little bit late to that party, and they just weren't my thing. I did have a lot of admiration for them, possibly in later years when they went out on their own, but I never really knew much about them, which sounds really ridiculous because everybody knows about the Beatles. Well, obviously, like everyone else, I know their names, I know their faces, I know their songs, probably their early stuff, but never was a fan. So it was a bit of a gentle surprise whenever I realised that there was someone around me and I couldn't get for a while who it was. And as always, it was in the morning. So I'm going to share with you what I got, and it actually came from George Harrison. So you're talking about a person who was really gentle, really gentle, probably one of the most gentle people I've ever come across. By no means forceful, but did not hold back. This guy talked on a level that I have never heard anybody speak on. And he made it so simple what he was saying, and yet I know in my lifetime I'll never achieve what he was talking about when he was talking about meditation and stuff like that. So I'm going to bring you through it piece by piece, and as usual, you know I always write notes so that I don't kind of go too far off topic. But one of the things was, and I'm just going to go through the notes if you don't mind, he talked about the Beatles and starting out. And he said there was great excitement. You know, they were really on a rush. And this was before they'd made it. This is when they were playing clubs that weren't really where you want to be. But they really seemed to enjoy it. They loved the excitement. And he said there was loads of excitement. There was also loads of poverty. But he said the rush of youth was amazing. And from that rush, you know, they were doing what they wanted to do. They were doing it on their terms at the time. They were being paid very little money, but just the whole rush of youth was just right behind them. And he really seemed to, looking back, really savoured that. You know, and it was something that he held on to, and he just looked at it as being a wonderful time. On the writing front, he said that the Lennon and McCartney writing duo, he said, just seemed to fit like a jigsaw. It just was so perfect that the two of them worked so perfectly together that they just clicked like a jigsaw into place without having to work too hard or having to read what the other person was saying. It was kind of like, that works. Put that in. I can work with that. So they seemed to have a very natural ability to work together. He said he did work on a few of their songs and he did write some, but he never considered himself to be part of that duo. And I wouldn't say that there was any dislike for the other two, but he said that for him, he could hear the difference if it was a song that he had put together, you know, as opposed to McCartney and Lennon working together. He said he could hear it himself, that it was different. And he knew that it just wasn't, let's put it like this, a Beatles song. On the breakup of the Beatles, he said that what happened was they really started to get on each other's nerves. They really started to grate on each other. And he said that really was the beginning of the end. And he said the time that they split was the right time to split. They wanted to go in different directions. So had they have went on together, they would never have found what each of them was looking for in the musical area that they wanted to go into. And that wasn't what they wanted. And he said it was a good thing. He felt it was a good thing that the split happened when it did happen. He said it really did help them all develop in their own musical styles. And after a period of time, their friendship had turned to a deeper friendship and much more respectful. They had got older, they had developed themselves, they had matured, and they were making the music that they themselves wanted to make, as opposed to perhaps what the fans wanted from them. And the fact that they were getting on each other's nerves, they were irritating each other, they were no longer doing that. So the friendships were able to develop and, come to a fresh light. And also that because they were doing what they were doing, there was a lot more respect around each other for what their musical abilities were. And he said their music abilities, as far as he was concerned, was very different. Each of them had a very different approach when they went out on their own. He made no bones about the fact that they dabbled in drugs. And he said that for him personally, what he was finding in drugs was what he was really looking for. And he could get that. He could get that by getting really high. But it was unsustainable. It was short-lived. And so it became a thing where you had to keep chasing the drugs. You had to keep chasing that inner whatever it was giving him. He also then said that that was the one thing that brought him to meditation, because he found that through meditation, he could reach that high that you do reach when you're on drugs. And to him, the way he was showing me it was, there was a happiness, there was a complete peace of mind, there was a peacefulness, and there was an inner development into the self through, firstly, drugs, but then that was short-lived, as he said, you had to keep taking them. But once meditation had come into his life, and he talked about the Maharishi, he talked about India, he said that all four of them got something out of it. Every one of them got something out of it, and that they did embrace it, and it was just to what degree and what they did with it. That's what was kind of left at the end. So he said for him, what it did was, it gave him the same inner peace and tranquility that he was getting on the drugs that he had been taking, but instead of having to chase for the next drug, it was very simple. It was just another meditation he needed, which was not doing the body any harm or doing the mind or the brain any harm. And he said the longer you do it, the more peaceful it is, the more easy it is to reach that level. And the level that he showed me was a level that, I would meditate, but it's not what he was talking about. He was talking about a very deep meditation. I would meditate, but it's pretty light in comparison to what I saw where he was. And it seemed to be with him a life meditation, if that makes sense. It wasn't a meditation for, an hour and then just kind of moving into the world and things like that there. It was something that he did, and even when working in the world and with other people and doing stuff and in everyday life, he still held that meditative state, which is something that he was able to show me, but something that I personally would know I could never, ever, ever reach. It would be impossible for me to do that. And it wouldn't matter how long, or how many years I'd done it. Whereas with him, it seemed to be something that he really did work on, but something that seemed to come fairly easy to him as a person. Another thing he said about meditation for him, he said he couldn't speak for the others, he just knew that they got an experience out of it, and it was something that they could maintain throughout their lives. But he said that for him, personally speaking, he reached what he wanted to reach, and that was the meditative state of life. And it's not like you're closed to the rest of the world. You're not closing them out. He said it's just where you deal with things, or he dealt with things, totally differently from the way he had dealt with things before. And it gave him a great balance in his life. He said he didn't ever think that he would have got that balance himself naturally without meditation. And it was something that he was really grateful for. He made no bones about that. It seemed to be something that he'd been chasing, or he had been chasing all his life, and finally got. And once he got it, he was not letting go of that thing. It was something he needed as a human being, and it enriched him in every possible way. He also said that he would have never had the ability to live with the contentment that he found living with after he was used to meditating on a very regular basis, which basically was what I saw was not an everyday meditation, but basically it just was a living meditation. It was day to day, hour to hour, minute by minute, moment to moment. So it was a consistent thing, and it seemed to be a place that he didn't ever take himself out of, if that makes any sense, but also that it didn't take life out. It didn't close life out. It just created this ability to live in life in a very balanced way, and in a very contented way, and in a very happy and peaceful way. What he did talk a lot about was, he talked about his wife, and he said that he was exceptionally lucky because he could have went through his life and had a lot of women, and he said he was a womanizer. He said there was no doubt women played a big part in his life, but when he met his wife Olivia, he said there was just something about her that captivated him on a level that took him totally unawares. He wasn't looking to meet a partner. He had plenty of women around him. He didn't need a lifetime partner. He wasn't looking for that. And he was very contented in his life at that stage. So there was no reason to look for a lifetime partner. And suddenly she was just right in front of him. And from that, he said, the sparkle that people feel that they have when they fall in love, it wasn't that it was lacking. It had nothing to do with it being lacking. It was just that it was so easy for him and her to simply just blend together as two human beings, being one. He said she was the strongest woman he had ever encountered. And yet, he said she was the most feminine, fragile-looking girl you would ever meet. He also talked about his son, Danny, right? And he said that at the end of the day, that was really the icing on the cake. There had been no children. I don't know whether they were planning to have a family. They possibly were. But suddenly she was pregnant, and it was just, this just could not be better. And he said from the moment that he heard about the pregnancy and she told him, to the moment of his death, he said he never felt love like he felt as a father. Very different from as he felt as a husband. Totally equal, but very, very, very different. And he said his son was the light of his life. And also, he said, the mother that brought the child to him, Olivia, was, he says, so different from any other woman that he had ever met. She was not argumentative. She was not strong in her opinions, but she had very strong opinions. But he said it was her strength of character that really got him, and that she was also like a wisp, if you know what I mean. He said she was just like a fresh air breeze, just breezing around the place, and yet the strength of a mountain. So when he fell in love, he really fell in love. He didn't fall in love with just the looks. He didn't fall in love with just her stunning personality. He didn't fall in love with her sense of humour. He fell in love with the complete person. And he said she didn't even know what the complete person was, but he saw it and he loved it. He talked a lot about his garden, and I don't know much about gardening. I am not a gardener. I'll do what's necessary, but I'm not a gardener. He talked about his garden, and he talked about his garden in length. He said this was a place that he really had envisaged in his mind, and then he had created. And he said it really was like paradise to him. Everything, every plant, every inch of it, there was something new and something special in. And to him, I think it meant almost as much as his own music, his own expression in music. He said it was just, he says, the place you could go into. It didn't matter if it was raining, if the sun was shining. At the end of the day, he said, you just went into the garden and you just sat and you were just there. And I know he was talking about meditation. He did show me the garden, and I will say I find it quite breathtaking, because I'm not a person who's into gardening. I probably couldn't even tell you the name of 4 different flowers. I think that's about as far as I can go. It was the colours, it was the textures, it was the greenery, it was the paths, it was everything. And so there he found that that's where he was very, very, very close to nature. That's where he was closest to himself, and that's where he was closest to God. And he made no bones about that. He followed the Hindu religion, and I think he felt that it totally enriched everything about him. The garden was the expression of what he got through that type of meditation. And if any of you can ever reach that, I would celebrate it in a very big way. Because, as I've said before, and I'll probably keep saying it to myself, I, in this lifetime, will never reach that, could never reach that, what he got. To live that way, to be that close to yourself and to your God, to me is really, I would find it difficult, because you get caught up in the everyday life, where he was able to balance the everyday life with the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So that was something extraordinary. And as I say, the other thing that was totally extraordinary, and I would love it if I could find photographs of the garden, because what I saw was exquisite. The colours, there was rain on one of the leaves, and it just trickled down and just dropped on the ground. And he said, you see how simple it is. And you go, oh my God, I wouldn't have even noticed that. And I'm a person who loves trees. I couldn't name many plants or flowers, or maybe 4, as I say, but I love trees, and I've always loved trees. But this particular garden, if I can ever find it online, I will put it up for people to see, because what I saw, what he showed me, was, as I say, the only word I can say is exquisite. It was exquisite. He then started to talk about music. He said, I suppose you want to hear about my music. And I said, only if you want to talk about it. And he said, yeah. He says, I do. He says, I loved music. Really, really had a passion for music. He said he loved music. He always loved music. And he said as time went on, towards, let's say, the last maybe 10, 15 years of his life, he said, then, he says, music became very enriching to him. It was his expression, and it was his type of music, and it was what he wanted to put out. And he said, truthfully, it was like putting air into the air, if that makes sense, which was how the guitars worked, how the instruments came together, what the words meant to him. So there was also that meditation spirituality in the music that he was doing, which, personally speaking, I have not heard any of. I think I remember the song My Sweet Lord. I think it was a hit at one time. Beyond that, I don't know anything about his music. But to him, it was an expression of himself. But he said towards the end, and I'm taking it to be maybe the last 5 years of his life, he said he had moved not away from that love of music, but he had started to have more fun. And that probably would have been with the Travelling Wilburys. He said it really became fun. It was fun to be around people. It was fun to engage with them musically. It was fun to just do it for the sake of doing it, and let's see what comes out the other side. So that was kind of nice, and I was really glad, because what I thought, and these are only my thoughts, was that the music that he was doing on his own, with other people obviously, what he would say was his form of music. It seemed to be very intense. It seemed to be very expressive, but exceptionally intense to him. Whereas he said with the rest of them, when he joined with the Travelling Wilburys, he said that was just such fun. He says it was just lovely to just engage with people and laugh and have fun, and just simply, it didn't matter if it worked or it didn't work. You were with other people who felt the same way. They were just really enjoying the moment, and they were enjoying being in the moment. He then said that he was blessed with a wonderful life. He said, I really was blessed with a wonderful life. He said, I had a wonderful family when I was growing up, and we may not have had everything, but it was a loving household. And his parents and his siblings, he said, it was just like any other family. It was warm, it was loving. They all wanted the best for each other. And the path that he took musically was an unusual one for the household, although he said there was always music around the house. But he said in that sense, he did have a wonderful, blessed life. And that was the word he used, blessed. And from there on, he said, bar the clubs, the bad pay, all the stuff that went on, the youth, the madness, even the drugs, stuff like that there. He said it was really all part of the life that he was living, and there's not a moment of it he would take back. So he looked on his time with the Beatles as a tremendously fun time. There was parts of himself he held back, he said, but that was because he felt that he didn't fall into the Lennon-McCartney, school of writing. He admired it and he respected it, but it just wasn't what he was looking for. Nor, I think, listening to him, was he aware of exactly what he was looking for. He found that later through meditation. He also said that he was around his wife and his son, and he said, my beautiful wife and my beautiful son, who I'm around every day, I have the enjoyment of true family, and true friendships. So that was George Harrison. And I'm only, the rest was taken from notes of what I'd seen and what he had told me. And now I'm just talking from me, and the experience that I got from it would be, I've never heard anyone quite as spiritual ever. You hear spiritual teachers, you can catch it on the website, all of that, but I've never heard anyone speak with as much simplicity and with as much depth as he put into the conversation. And also, he was such a gentle person. His gentleness was amazing. I mean, he talked about his wife being like a breath of fresh air. This guy was just like he showed me, like the leaf, with the little drop of rain just dripping. It was absolutely beautiful. And yet you think, but I was never a Beatles fan. Surely this must mean more to people who grew up with them, who loved their music, than it would be for me, who was probably, and being honest, more into other people's music. I mean, I love Dylan, I love Leonard Cohen, I love Van Morrison. There are so many people. If you want to talk about rock, I love the Doors. But it was just so interesting that you've this man who you didn't know anything about, and suddenly you have your whole bedroom literally it felt like in sunlight, and the air was so light, it was incredible. I'll never get there. I'll never get there with meditation. It's going to be impossible. I wouldn't even try. I'll stick with what I do, because I know I can never elevate beyond what I do. But for anyone out there who's interested in it, give it a shot. Try and connect with them, because you're going to find, like I did, the most amazing person, and the most gentle person, and also the most sincere, dedicated, and yet light person. I mean, he was so light in energy, it was incredible. So, for those of you who love the Beatles, those who love George Harrison, that's all I can give you. And I personally feel quite enriched by what I saw, what I heard, and his presence. And you would say his company, but I wouldn't say his company. I would say his presence, because that was exactly how it felt, like you were in his presence. And as I say, if you ever wake up and your room feels like mine, it feels as if there's sunlight just coming through every area of the room, and the air in the room is it's so incredibly light. Take it, go with it, and if you can make more out of your meditation, or just simply the joy of life, then go for it. I can't impress more upon you than I've already done, because the words that I'm using, they're not deep enough to let you know what that feeling is. I'm just going to say one thing. Try for yourself. Try contacting him for yourself. This is a man who is pure energy, pure love. Oh, incredible. That's all I can say. Incredible. And beyond that, there's nothing else I can say, except take care of yourselves, take care of each other. If you have any comments, leave below. Check out the website. Do whatever you want to do. Feel as privileged as I have felt. Go talk to him. And also, be safe, be careful. Love each other. Take care. Bye.